Idia and Ortho can be very protective of one another, with Ortho trying to protect Idia during New Year's and Idia then intervening to protect Ortho. This is a theme of the Wish Upon a Star event, where Idia refuses to participate until Ortho offers to help and begs him to reconsider. Idia still refuses to join in the performance for which he has been selected, and Ortho is reluctant to force him, but Idia eventually relents after losing a bet to Deuce. There is a similar theme in Glorious Masquerade, with Ortho encouraging Idia to perform in front of crowds despite his reluctance and Idia following through so as not to disappoint him and Silver. Idia gets a natural excuse to escape the obligation when the weather takes a turn for the worse, but instead decides to figure out a way to make the performance happen so as not to upset Ortho. Idia overhears Ortho's wish for the event and, knowing that Ortho wants them to bond and forge new memories between Idia and his current self, Idia crafts a new set of gear for Ortho that enables him to go into space. Idia invites members of the press to the school by hacking Crowley's email so that the performance cannot be cancelled, and asks Trey and Deuce to go through with the performance despite the weather risk, as he wants to do it for Ortho. Both brothers face their respective fears, Ortho being afraid of lightning, Idia being afraid of people, in their efforts to make each other happy. This sentiment is also echoed in Ortho's dorm vignette, where he attacks Diasomnia students for insulting Idia. As punishment, Train forbids him from entering the main building of the school for a week, which will force Idia to attend his classes alone. Prior to Book 6, Ortho did not count as a student on his own, attending Idia's classes alongside him. Idia is upset with the students who picked a fight with Ortho, while Ortho is also upset about creating trouble for Idia. Ortho ultimately gets his revenge on the bullies on his own by projecting embarrassing private videos, neither getting himself caught nor getting Idia into trouble. Ortho is protective of Idia in general, calling out Grim, Deuce, Ace and Cater for bad-mouthing Idia during Book 5 and attempting to vaporize the main school building to save him from Eliza. When Idia disappears during Vargas camp, Ortho immediately boots up the systems he had deactivated for the event to hunt him down, spending the rest of the camp watching over him to make sure he does not escape from doing squats, Idia's punishment for sneaking in a smartphone. Ortho also tells off Colum and the Phantom Bride team for speaking poorly about Idia, and asks Idia to put more thought into what he wears as he doesn't want people talking badly about him. Idia shares in a vignette that he wears his labwear for class over his pajamas when playing video games in his room, as the pockets in the coat are convenient for electronics. The coat itself is good protection when he spills drinks, and he has customized the goggles with blue light lenses, while he wears the gloves mostly for aesthetic and to keep his sweaty fingers off the controller. Ortho is unimpressed, saying that it is alright if it makes him happy, but Idia isn't to wear it anywhere outside of class or his bedroom. Idia reluctantly agrees, only to immediately sneak out of his room in the middle of the night for snacks, wearing exactly what Ortho told him not to. Idia scares Grim on accident, and Grim immediately starts a rumor at the school about the evil spirit of a scientist wandering the campus. Ortho immediately confronts Idia, who denies it until Ortho applies his lie detection capability. Ortho then confiscates Idia's labwear to keep it from him when he is not in class. Despite being programmed by Idia himself, Ortho seems to be the more socially aware of the two. When Idia calls Azul's wish upon a star wish bland and predictable, Ortho scolds him with, "You're saying the quiet part out loud." When Idia makes a poorly timed joke during Book 6, saying, "I'm gonna strap you all to chairs so you can't move, then examine you with a bunch of probes," Ortho scolds him with, "They're already upset we hauled them out here against their wills. Scaring them will only make it worse." Vil compliments Ortho on his compassion but takes it back when Ortho follows up with, "Besides, subjecting them to excessive levels of stress won't yield accurate data." Ortho also completely ignores Idia's resistance to playing video games with the kidnapped students during Book 6 in an effort to get everyone to play together. Idia receives special permission from the head mage to have Ortho attend his classes with him, and in Book 6 Jamil realizes why. Someone in Idia's position as future watchman of the Island of Woe would probably not attend school without any aides, much like how he himself serves Colum. This arrangement is changed in Book 7, where Ortho has enrolled as a first-year student on his own and becomes unable to join Idia in his classes outside of special joint lessons. Ortho is big on Idia making friends even during Book 6, where several of his peers are kidnapped and he is assigned to overseeing them, despite Idia's constant denial. Idia becomes suspicious of Robot Ortho too late to stop him from allying with Original Ortho, who declare that they will be resetting the world and making Idia into a superhero. Realizing that Original Ortho is attempting to return, Idia allies with him without hesitation. When their plot fails, Idia chooses to die with the Orthos, but Vil saves his life. Idia has a final conversation with Original Ortho, who tells him that he knows Idia loves the world too much to give up on it, despite what he says, and that he has a future. Idia is able to recover Robot Ortho's memory card, rebooting him despite knowing what he will have to do if Ortho ever goes out of control again. Idia releases Robot Ortho from his role of little brother, even offering to call him by a new name, but Robot Ortho says that he wants to be Idia's real little brother. Idia assures him that they have been real brothers for a long time. Ortho makes a request, and one of the final scenes of Book 6 is a very reluctant Idia returning to NRC and visiting Ramshackle Dorm with a game console so that the gathered students can play together. Idia's guilt over Original Ortho's incident is hinted at early on, in Ortho's Labware vignette, but it is not until Book 6 that we learn what happened. Seeing how 10-year-old Idia is depressed by how his future has been decided for him, Original Ortho encourages him to go on adventures before he becomes an adult. Idia decides to do just that and takes Ortho along with him, shutting down the security system that keep the phantoms in check in his attempts to flee. An escaped monster attacks Ortho in front of him, in an incident that Idia now says is a blank for him. Idia blames himself for Ortho's death and decides to take him back, spending 2 years building Robot Ortho, the world's first self-improving technomantic humanoid. Idia's accomplishment disturbs researchers at the facility where he lives, but Idia decides, who cares if he doesn't have some unprovable, immaterial thing like a soul? My brother's right here. Idia reflects, maybe if I hadn't tried to go on an adventure, or maybe if I'd never wished to be a hero, maybe if I'd never been born into this family at all. Fairy Gala Remix is a stressful time for Idia, who initially refuses to let Ortho participate. Ortho convinces him through fake crying. Fairy Gala Remix is Ortho's first time making his own gear, though it was designed by Cruel. When Ortho gets called out for his unoriginal ideas by Vil, Ace asks why he just doesn't go to Idia for help. Ortho insists that he wants to challenge himself rather than have his brother tell him what he should think. Ortho does not even tell Idia about the plan he comes up with help from the other first-year students, with Vil and Cruel calling Idia out for his lack of support in the brother he supposedly has so much faith in. Idia encourages him with, "Your big bro knows you can do it." About Idia's use of big bro. In both games, Robot Ortho and Original Ortho are differentiated by how they refer to Idia in 2 different ways. This is important in Book 6, acting as the hint to Idia that reveals who he is really talking to after the island gets taken over, and it is used in a symbolic, passing of the torch, way by Original Ortho. But there is a third element introduced on EN that doesn't exist in the original game. When Idia refers to himself as Nichan, it was changed to Big Bro on EN, but it is supposed to be the same way that Original Ortho refers to Idia, and Original Ortho does not refer to Idia as Big Bro on EN. This means that every time Idia refers to himself as Big Bro in the English language adaptation, it is a reference to Original Ortho. I thought that this might be a post-Book 6 character trait, but Idia has actually done so before, where it was removed from EN. Looking at all these instances together, it seems, "leave it to your big bro," is a go-to phrase for Idia, as what he would say to Original Ortho as a child. Idia is very dependent upon Ortho, showing extreme reluctance to interact with anyone at any time, but especially when Ortho is not with him, and saying that he wishes he and Ortho could have their dorm all to themselves. Riddle calls him out on having Ortho do all of his work for him, saying that Idia refuses to attend meetings and instead makes Ortho receive his visitors and handle all orientation preparations. Honestly, I feel bad for him, having to take on all the work of his irresponsible house warden. Idia also tries to leave the Magicam monster problem on campus to Ortho as well, as, "He's way better at talking to people than me." Having joined the film club after Book 6, Ortho leaves Idia to fend for himself during Vargas Camp 2, despite Idia's protests. During Wish Upon a Star, Idia gets into an argument with Sebek over boss fights, and Ortho makes the conscious decision to not step in, as, "It sure is nice to see him hitting it off with someone besides me." After waking up from his possession during Spectral Soiree, one of the first things Idia does is call for Ortho. Idia tries to take Ortho along with him to Appel's hometown in the Harveston event, but Ortho decides on his own that Idia will be going alone. Idia announces that he will not be going on the trip without Ortho, and at Ortho's request Appel and Sebek end up dragging Idia physically away to join them. Idia can be convinced to do things he would normally refuse to do if he thinks it would make Ortho happy, such as taking a group photo during the Harveston event in traditional clothing. He is also convinced to visit Fleur City during Glorious Masquerade after Ortho asks him to consider it as a practice run for a trip they can take together in the future. He also joins the post-Spectral Soiree Halloween party in order to thank Ortho for helping him. Idia also decorates Ortho's Stargazer gear at his request, saying that he has put all his engineering know-how into Ortho and has got to keep researching to make sure that he doesn't grow obsolete. Ortho says that Idia also make him oral energy intake gear, so that he can eat food with others on his birthday, and Idia says that he has made the security on Ortho so tight that it's now impossible for one person to handle it on their own. Ortho's burst gear was inspired by a need to expose overheating circuits to air, designed, by Ortho's request, to look like the ceremonial robes worn by the other students. Ortho asks Idia if they might be able to dress up and take a picture together in the mirror chamber, as they didn't have the chance when Idia first enrolled. Idia reluctantly agrees out of guilt, only to immediately regret it. On the day of the opening ceremonies, Ortho is too excited to wait for Idia to finish getting ready and goes to the main campus by himself, excited to look just like his brother. He runs into Vil, who compliments his look. Idia manages to leave his room but begins to panic and goes into the courtyard to calm himself down. He runs into Malleus, who is unaware that the opening ceremonies are even happening, and says that Idia's look may be considered weird, and, "I simply cannot understand the meaningless things humans do at times." Meanwhile, Vil encourages Ortho to go to the ceremony himself, but Ortho insists, "I want to create real memories with Idia. With me the way I am now, I mean. That's why I wanted to go to a major Night Raven College event with him, to share an experience we can only have right here and now." Ortho goes to look for Idia and finds him conversing with Malleus. At first he is excited, but then Idia runs away from Malleus, back to Ignihide. Idia reflects that, "Ortho would have been really sad to see me like that, so this is a good thing. I'm sure Ortho's having a great time at orientation all by himself. He was so excited for it, after all." Ortho, however, shows up at his door to apologize for his selfishness, saying, "It's okay. I'll always be with you." The incident is revealed to have been a flashback by Ortho, instigated by Grimm asking why Ortho has a fancy body that looks like the ceremonial robes, but Ortho lies and says, "There isn't any particular reason. I just thought it'd be cool." While Idia will concede to some of Ortho's requests, there are times when Idia will tell him no, such as when Ortho asks for the ability to walk on the ground instead of hover, and Idia refuses on the grounds that flying is for heroes. Ortho eventually gets his weight-bearing feat after Jade and Floyd hear of his conundrum and force Idia's compliance via blackmail. Idia also refuses to go with Ortho to an amusement park, saying, "Don't assume a life spent in a dark, cramped room is inherently boring. How about I meet you halfway and code up a VR amusement park this weekend?" But Ortho is not pleased. Idia also refuses to spend time outside with Ortho after getting a low score in a video game, refuses to play Spell Drive with him, and turns down an invitation to spend time together due to having plans with an online friend. Ortho is often complimenting Idia, saying he is amazing, more than cool, and that he is super proud. After presenting the newly crafted Ortho to researchers on the island of Woe for the first time, Idia announces that, one day, he will be able to go into space unassisted. This is an accomplishment we get to see during the Wish Upon a Star event, when Idia creates an atmospheric escape apparatus for Ortho that takes him into space, presumably for the first time.